Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest edition of the Golf in Society podcast. I've got the privilege and pleasure today of being in the company of Steve Phillip and Matthew O'Sullivan. I won't go into too much detail at the minute. I'll let them introduce themselves, their organisations in a moment. But today we're going to be talking about everything mental health, and especially in the context of the world of golf. Because, as you know, we're very, very keen to promote the fact that golf doesn't just improve your body, your soul, it also is really, really good for your mental well-being as well. So that's what we're going to be going through today. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Steve. Steve, welcome.
Thanks, Anthony. Thanks for having me along today.
So if you wouldn't mind just telling the audience, Steve, a little bit about you, your background and the organisation you work for at the moment, your why maybe, and your hopes for the future.
Gosh, right, not a little bit to unpack then in a couple of minutes. But yes, I am the founder and director of a community interest company, a CIC, called the Jordan Legacy. We were founded in August of 2020, just several months after the death by suicide, tragically, of my 34-year-old son, Jordan. In fact, at the time of recording this, we're literally a day after the fifth anniversary. And I knew nothing about the world of mental health or suicide prevention other than I had a son that was diagnosed with clinical anxiety and depression. So this was a whole new world for me, one that I'm still on a learning journey with, but rapidly had to learn a lot about very, very quickly. And our work is essentially around what we can do in our workplaces, our education centres and in our communities to prevent all preventable suicides. The research and evidence tells us that most suicides are preventable. Not all, but most. So as a society, surely our goal has to be to try and prevent all those that are preventable.
Fantastic. That's a great introduction. So welcome.
Thank you.
And last but not least, over to Matthew O'Sullivan from an organisation called Active North Yorkshire. Now, interesting news today. When I first met Matthew, his organisation was titled Brimham's Active. So I'm sure he'll come on to the exciting news as to why Brimham's Active is now known as Active North Yorkshire. So welcome to our podcast, Matthew. If you just want to say to our audience a little bit about you, your background and what you do at Active North Yorkshire.
Okay. Yeah, so my role, I'm a health and wellbeing development officer working for Active North Yorkshire, was Brimham's Active. So Brimham's Active was a LAC, so a local authority, standalone council. And we had a lot more say in what we wanted to do and what we wanted to achieve. And we worked on a health and wellbeing strategy, a holistic approach. So looking at the whole person approach, not just your typical leisure provider, which is a gym, possibly a swimming pool, if you're lucky, maybe a spa, and that's it. So where my work comes in is I help to develop and oversee health initiative programs. And the reason why I got into this industry and working in active health is because I had a desire to help people most in need. I did work in a stereotypical gym. And it got to the point where I was sort of questioning myself as to, why am I working in this commercial gym? How am I helping people? I don't want to help people that want to come in and look like Arnold Schwarzenegger did in the 70s because, you have to obviously give them a few home truths of what they have to take to get that way. And I saw an advert working for the active health team, Harrogate Borough Council, as it was. And I just went and emailed my current line manager. There was a particular course or certificate that I didn't do, but I had everything else. And I said I was willing to learn and do the certificate and do the course to upskill. Thankfully, I got the job. I was at the sort of coalface, the front line. I was delivering these initiatives. So I could see the impact that we were having. And then throughout my time, I got promoted into my current position. And it's more of a management leadership type role.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Most importantly, are you enjoying it?
I absolutely love what I do.
So would you just mind explaining a little bit about Obviously, you started as Brimham's Active, you're now Active North Yorkshire. What does that mean in terms of your role and responsibility?
So in terms of my role and responsibility, it's probably extra responsibility. Brimham's Active was just serving the Harrogate district. Active North Yorkshire is the whole of the county.
Fantastic.
So I know I have big plans ahead for helping start some of the initiatives and programs that we currently run in Harrogate across the county.
Very good, very good. And I'll just share with the audience that Matthew is wearing his brand new merchandise, which I have to say looks very, very smart. So hopefully we'll get a photograph later and you'll be able to see his smart new uniform. But thanks, gents, and welcome, and thanks for those introductions. So we're going to move on to the first main part of our conversation today around everything mental health. And really, I think it's important that we put into context the mental health crisis. And there's nothing better than having Steve and Matthew here in the room to talk about the scale of the crisis, the context, and basically, just put it into facts and figures in terms of where we're at as a society around mental health and suicide prevention. So, Steve, would you mind kicking this bit off for me, please?
Yes. Gosh, where to start? We know we're living, many would say, in a mental health crisis internationally, with depression being one of the biggest illnesses that's out there at the moment. If we look at suicide specifically, that the Jordan Legacy focuses on, in the UK, we lose more than 6,000 plus men and women and children every single year, with the ages getting younger, which is really concerning. And for 16 years, those numbers stayed there or thereabouts the same. So we've not seen any measurable decline in that time. Now, for the first time, the Office for National Statistics have looked at 2022 to 23, seen a 7% increase on average in those numbers. So that's an 8% increase in female suicides, which is interesting, and a 5% increase in male suicide. I say it's interesting because typically 75% of all suicides are male, often thought of because it's the means by which men take their own lives, which have been typically more violent, more aggressive, although we are seeing emerging trends to suggest more female suicides are using similar methods now. But also because male suicides tend to be less planned ahead of time, if you like, and sometimes more reactive. But I think we all know, we're fairly confident that those numbers are vastly underreported, because suicides, of course, are based on a coronial process where a coroner's inquest will determine whether it was a suicide or not. And yet quite often verdicts are recorded of misadventure or accidental death, where I think in a lot of cases people will be pretty certain, family members particularly, and others, that was a suicide. So I think the numbers we're seeing are kind of the tip of the iceberg. For every death by suicide, another 20 people attempt suicide. And as far as the mental health crisis is concerned, if we look at the NHS data that was published at the beginning of 2024, looking back over 2023, it showed that 1.2 million young people were referred to child and adolescent mental health care services in that previous year. First time it's ever gone over 1 million.
Wow. Yeah.
And if we put that into context for a moment, that is equivalent to the entire population of the city of Birmingham, all being referred to mental health crisis teams in a single year.
Wow.
That's the kind of context that we're looking at the moment. There are many more stats, Anthony, but I think just as a taster, I think that positions the issues that we're facing.
Yeah, and the one thing I would just like you to maybe just give me a little bit more of an insight on is understanding, I suppose, a little bit about the situation in terms of the process at the minute. So you say that there's all of those young people needing support in terms of from an identification that support is needed to them actually getting that support. What's that looking like at the minute?
Well, the issue we know from many of the parents we've spoken to, that it's not unusual to see an 18-month to 2-year waiting list once they've visited CAMHS to get that diagnosis, to find the support that they need afterwards. So yes, a diagnosis is maybe being determined through child and adolescent mental health care services, that there's an issue, but in terms of the support, the families can be waiting up to 2 years.
And just so I understand it, because you have intimate knowledge here, and that's why we're having this conversation today, during that period of waiting, what actually happens?
Parents, and I've spoken to many of these parents myself, are bewildered. They reach out to us at the Jordan Legacy. We're not a crisis team. They reach out to other charities saying, where do we go? What, I'll pay money, if need be. And interestingly, there is a tremendous amount of help out there within, let's call it the third sector, the private sector, not necessarily NHS services. So the help is there, but quite often that help requires paying for, if it's a therapist or a counsellor, of course. Yeah. But there are great sites out there, from the Ollie Foundation to Calm and all kinds of other charities and organisations. So the help is out there. I think what we recognise is it's about education, and it's about signposting so that families know, where can we go if we're going to have to wait 2 years? Yeah. What is there in between? So I think, on a hopeful note, there is support out there, but a lot of families just don't know where to go to find it.
No, and just another little bit of an insight, if you don't mind, is that issue around having to wait up to 18 months to 2 years for support, is that down to just lack of capacity to deliver?
Yeah, absolutely, lack of capacity. And that's what we hear from the mental health services and the NHS. We hear a lot about the broken system, and I think even internally within the NHS, they're using that language themselves. Some of it is under-resourced, some of it is systems and processes. Yeah. It's a combination of factors. But at the moment, the mental health crisis teams are overwhelmed and unable to cope at a level we need them to at the moment, which is why, and one of the things we're going to talk about today, preventative solutions rather than crisis solutions, or as well as crisis solutions perhaps, are going to be so important going forward. But that applies to health generally, of course.
Yeah, very good. Brilliant. Thanks for that. Now, we're going through the pain points at the minute with the mental health crisis with my guests today at the moment. But what I'm going to say is there is a lot more hope at the end of this conversation, because, as you know, as entrepreneurs, as people desperate to make a difference, not just within the mental health space, but generally within society, we need the pain points and the issues to be out there in the open, so that we as entrepreneurs, as people who want to be the change makers of the future, can address them and put action plans in place to actually make the change a reality. So we are coming on to a few more hopeful things at the end, but just in terms of finishing off the whole context around the crisis in mental health and mental health support, Matthew, from your perspective, as a well-being a person working in that industry, but also from a North Yorkshire perspective as well, maybe just set the context in terms of, what the issues are at the minute around mental health.
I think in terms of mental health, what we're seeing when we're getting referrals through to our active health team, we're getting more and more referrals, and all we could offer them was a gym referral, which actually had a cost to it. So, from my perspective, I wanted to do something to try and combat that and help people. We've seen a lot of people coming through that sometimes put on medication and it's not necessarily helping them. It's masking the problem. I suppose the only other way of sort of explaining it is if you cut yourself and you put a plaster on. Yeah. That's literally what's being offered. Yeah. And what I'd like to see happen is, instead of, I know there's a place for people to have medication, but instead of that medication, is there something else, another avenue that we can send people to where they can get some really good support?
And I think in terms of North Yorkshire, where we are at the moment, I think that whole rurality of the county, people living in probably more smaller communities, isolated communities, farming communities, I suppose the size and rurality of the county must be a bit of a challenge as well in terms of getting to people who maybe have some of these, feelings of low mood, depression, mental health, unhappiness.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things I am most interested in helping and support is the farming community. Now I've had a conversation with a gentleman that sits on the National Farmers Union board. And it was just through conversation and open up and telling him what I'm obviously developing and what I'd like to do. He thought it was fantastic. They are really concerned within the farming community of poor mental health and, sadly, farmers committing suicide.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that is a real problem.
And just to finish off this little bit about the context of the health crisis, mental health crisis. As you know, at Golfing Society, we support families who are living with a sometimes terminal diagnosis of dementia or a chronic diagnosis of, a neurological condition like Parkinson's. But also we support their unpaid carers. And one of the things that comes across strongly in all of the surveys and feedback that we get from carers is they feel that since their loved one has been diagnosed, their own mental health has deteriorated. And I think we shouldn't underestimate that. And bearing in mind that the majority of people who take up that caring role are women, we're finding that a lot of people before they join or as they're joining and we do their first health assessments at Golfing Society, they're saying that they're really not in a good place mentally. They have low mood, they have no hope for the future, they feel as though they're stressed all the time, and probably taking up a role in life that they never thought they would have to do. Interesting enough, the Golfing Society programs haven't just improved the overall mental health well-being of the golfers and families we support to actually enjoy the activity, but the biggest improvement has actually been in the mental health and well-being and resilience of the unpaid carers. And in fact, 95.4% of carers surveyed said that they felt as though their mental and emotional well-being had improved since they joined the Golfing Society program. So I think it's, in terms of context, we shouldn't just think about, the wider society and all those issues. Here on this podcast today, we should really think about the context of what we do at Golfing Society and the families we support to improve their mental health and well-being through our programs as well, because it is a big issue. And, if you put the right people, the right place and the right support around them, then amazing things do happen and people can turn around how they feel about life and feel a bit more hopeful for the future. And that's, I suppose, a nice segue into the next part of our conversation, which is going to be looking at some exciting new initiatives and hopefully shaping a better future for people facing that mental health challenge in their life. So this is the exciting part of the podcast, the future, shaping a better future for people facing a challenge around their mental health. And really, I just want to put into context and say why golf is great for your mental health. I mean, at the end of the day, if I think about this from a personal perspective, I get out in the fresh air. If I've got a, problem in my life, if I'm not having a great day, my little place, and everyone needs a little place, my place to go to is the golf course, because I can get out there in the fresh air. I can just clear my mind and then I can get my life back on track. I call it regaining my emotional equilibrium. And during my own sort of wobbles with my own mental well-being during my life, golf has been my happy place. It's been the place I've gone to just to get back on track. And I think in many respects, golf has saved my life and saved my mental well-being. And I'm so happy that I have a place I can go to. And it's not just the place, it's the people there. I know that two of the people I could talk unconditionally about how I'm feeling are actually two of my golfing friends. And I think to have two people that you can open up to in those beautiful surroundings is really important to me in that moment of need. So, in terms of golf and why it's great for you, it's a great way of relieving stress. It can improve your mood. It increases your confidence and self-esteem. It reduces anxiety. Even when you hit a bad shot, believe it or not, there is a good shot just around the corner. And it improves your overall resilience because you've got to come back from a bad shot and hit a good shot. But it's brilliant from a social perspective as well. And, it improves your social circle, as I mentioned, and you make new friends. And some of those friends are lifelong friends that will be there in your moment of need. So golf gets a lot of a bad rap about being elitist, exclusive, and only for certain parts of society. But it's got so much to offer in spades. And I'm going to move on from what my view is in terms of the impact it's had on my life and some of the main benefits. And I'm going to just hand over to Steve now. And Steve, if you can just elaborate or move on from what I've just said in terms of why you think golf is great for your mental health.
Well, you and I were joking beforehand, Anthony, about the state of my game and how at times it's not been particularly good for my mental health. That's probably down to a lack of playing regularly, in fairness. I used to play golf to a decent standard. I was a 14 handicapper.
Very good.
Young man, but it's deteriorated since then. But my wife doesn't always get this, but I think there's something about golf, just turning up to the green, open spaces, beautifully cut greens, fairways, and just being out in that space. That doesn't really matter how good your game of golf is. Yeah. There's just something about being in that space, I think, that just makes you feel good. So then it's the camaraderie, it's playing alongside others, the whole social impact of the clubhouse and events and everything that goes around there. It's a world. It really is a social world. So I think there are a number of knock-on benefits. We know the benefits of being outdoors in the fresh air from a mental health perspective, something that we talk about a lot at the Jordan Legacy. We know it's much more conducive to people opening up and talking, particularly men who don't often like to be in that one-to-one, face-to-face situation in counselling or therapy. Walking side by side has been proven to work really well for them. And there's also recently some information that I learned from a psychologist to do with processing of trauma. And therefore we could talk similarly about mental health issues in general. That much of trauma is typically held in the right-hand side of our brains. And ideally, what we need to do with trauma is to be able to process it, which is why various types of therapy, talking therapy, get you to talk through the process. That's very much a left brain action. So what we need to do with trauma particularly is move it over to the left-hand side of the brain. And it's actually proven that the act of walking and the left-right movement actually helps process the brain and move that trauma to the left-hand side of the brain. So there is a scientific benefit, particularly from a trauma perspective, why we should be out there playing golf.
Well, fantastic. Every day's a school day.
Absolutely.
I didn't know that, yeah.
Absolutely. No, that one for nothing.
Matthew, I'm going to hand over to you now, and I'd like you to just explain to the audience a little bit about this exciting project. Hopefully we're going to be collaborating on in the new year.
Yeah, I'm really, really excited by this. As I mentioned previously, the statistics and the figures of people sadly taking their own life, particularly in men. I thought we need to take some action on this. And just going off the back of what Steve has just said, walking and talking is one of the best things you can do, especially outside in the green spaces. That got me thinking, could I develop a program, a men's mental health program, where we can incorporate green spaces, walking and talking, and including a physical activity? And golf is perfect. Absolutely perfect. So we research suggests that men don't like opening up face to face in a clinical setting. So with this new program, we won't be doing that. We'll be walking side by side, men together walking side by side, learning golf, playing golf, utilizing the green spaces, helping to clear their minds, and hopefully offer them that support group to help them through their problems.
That's fantastic.
So really excited by it. Mm-hmm. In terms of the program itself, the pilot, hopefully we're going to launch it in March 2025. And in terms of what we're going to be offering, it's going to be 24 weeks. So 24-week pilot scheme where we will do a very touch-based assessment when a man is referred into us. There's something that what we do use is a short Warwick Edinburgh mental wellbeing scale. Yeah. There's 7 statements there, and they will choose an answer based on 1 to 5. 1 not being very great, 5 being they're feeling fantastic. Yeah. It then sets them a score. We're then going to look at that 12 weeks later, ask the same questions, statements, and see what the outcome is. And hopefully we can see improvements in men's mental health over the 24 weeks. So initial health assessment, 12-week assessment, 24-week assessment.
So really you're combining walking and talking therapy in a sport that probably gives you the time to do that?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And when you first mentioned this project to me, I'm a great believer in if you're going to get involved in something, test it out.
Yes.
So I met up with 3 wonderful gentlemen at a golf club, and I didn't know 2 of them. I was introduced by one to the other 2, and we shared pleasantries to begin with. Talked about the football last night. I'm a Middlesbrough fan, so one of the other guys was a Middlesbrough fan, so we had a bit of a chat about our visits to Ayresome Park back in the day and everything else. And initially, those conversations were just, I would say arm's length, polite conversations. By the time we got to the back 9, we were opening up about our life stories.
Wow.
We were sharing some of our most difficult things that have happened in our lives. And then at the end, we're hugging, shaking hands and talking about playing again. And that to me was a light bulb moment because we talked a lot about it.
We did talk about it. I can remember you were a little bit skeptical at first. I don't know if this is going to work, but anyway, we'll go with it. So and then when you saw me the following week and said, it works.
Yeah. So for me, that was definitely the moment where I thought there's something in this. So we're absolutely thrilled as Golfing Society to be collaborating with you in the new year. And you know, when you get a sense that a project is going to be a success,
yes,
I think this is going to be massive because there aren't many other places and spaces that offer what golf offers.
No.
And the good thing I like about it is you're putting time. You're putting 24 weeks behind this.
Yes.
And ultimately, we all know to fix a broken mind is much harder than fixing a broken leg.
Yeah.
And it takes time. You need to build up trust. You need to build up those relationships so that people can open up and feel as though they can have those conversations.
Absolutely.
So over that 24-week period, that's some of the things that you'll be doing. And I know that it's going to be a success. But yeah, golf for me is absolutely perfect for this type of initiative.
It is. It is perfect. It really is. And my plan, as I've explained this to you before, Anthony, is we'd like to grow this firstly across the county of North Yorkshire.
Yeah.
Because there is a lot of need for something like this in this county.
Yeah.
Particularly when we talked about the farmers earlier. That's one particular community that I feel we need to help and support. And the other one was the armed forces. We have Catterick Garrison, probably the biggest base, I would say, in the UK. It's huge. And if we can help in any way, that's something I'd love for us to do.
Yeah, no, I could definitely see for those veterans that are facing mental health challenges.
Yeah.
And also maybe just struggling with that transition into civilian life.
Absolutely.
Because after having an army life, then into a civilian life, it's not always an easy transition to make. So I can definitely see how this program can play a part there as well. And I think the good thing for how we're approaching it, Matthew, is that we're actually involving people with lived experience in designing and delivering the program. This is not being prescribed to them without their involvement. And I think that is so, so important. Too many things at the moment are prescribed to you, but haven't been developed with those individuals at the heart of everything.
Not designed by them.
Exactly that.
Yeah, yeah. Now, you are absolutely right in what you're saying. There are things that are literally prescribed and not necessarily, they think they've got the individual's best interests at heart. And, you know, they might not have that.
Yeah.
They might not have the magic dust, so to speak, just to sprinkle on it because they haven't engaged properly with the lived experience.
Yeah.
And I know Steve can probably elaborate on this, but it is really, really important to involve people with lived experiences.
And you've obviously found that as well, Steve, in terms of involving people with lived experience?
Hugely. We did a piece of research at the Jordan Legacy last year, an action research project. We went out and interviewed all kinds of people, from heads of charities to campaigners to people working in the mental health and suicide prevention crisis teams. But a huge number of the people we interviewed in terms of how do we get the numbers down in the UK, the number of suicides down, were the people with lived experience. Because these people, many of them have come from a bereaved situation. They've looked at what was wrong with the systems or the process that led to their loved one taking their own life. So they've been right there at the coalface and seen it from the other side of the coin. So they've got a huge amount of value. And we know that some of the evidence-based success stories globally, and probably one of the biggest ones from which the term zero suicide came from, was out of Detroit and the Henry Ford healthcare system over there in the early 2000s, where they were having a particularly high level of suicide rates within the healthcare system. And Ed Kofi and his team decided they want to do something different and look to get the numbers down. And their aspiration was zero. And in fact, through quality circles, through continuous systemic action learning, but by particularly involving all stakeholders and having conversations with them, they, by 2009, having started the project around 2004, got the numbers down to zero in that healthcare system for the first time ever. But it took, we hear this term, it takes a village.
Yeah.
To make that kind of difference. And, that's what they did. And it's a proven framework now that's been used in other healthcare systems and is now being used in other areas outside of the healthcare system as well.
Well, I'm glad that Golfing Society is now in your village.
Likewise.
I'd like to move the conversation on now to more hope and more hope for the future, really. And Steve, you've organised, I think, what is a great initiative in the new year, and you've organised a conference here in Harrogate. Do you just want to tell the audience a little bit more about the concept and the sort of philosophy behind it?
Yeah, we're calling it, you've used the term conference, Anthony. I don't know. I'm kind of playing it out a little bit as a couple of events, because it's kind of part of the process. So Matt and myself, we've spoken, as we have with Dan Atkinson from North Yorkshire Public Health and others, about what can we do in North Yorkshire to get the numbers of suicides down and improve mental health and well-being, which is how we've ended up around this table today. And one of the things is we've got to start having more open conversations. We've got to start an education process in communities. So the two events are actually designed to share some of the wealth of experience that there is in the Yorkshire region around mental health. So we've got two dates. We've got January the 16th. We've got January the 31st. They're both morning events, 9 a.m. to 1 p.m., taking place at the Harrogate Police Treatment Centres. And we're going to hear from around about a dozen plus speakers on everything from the connection between mental health and finances to alcohol and how to reduce alcohol intake and the stresses and addictions that can be created there by getting out and running. We've got yourself speaking, of course, Anthony, about Golfing Society, which is fantastic, and the benefits of that. We've got people talking on bullying in the workplace and how to deal with some of those issues. We've got young person suicide, people from Papyrus coming. We've got speaker from Andy's Man Club. We've got a really great wealth of experience, and it's kind of an action-packed couple of half days. But what I wanted to do was start to showcase what there is available and just how complex an issue this is. That suicide is not down to one particular cause. It's a mix of biological, societal, psychological issues that can all come together, which from a perspective of hope means that if we can deal with some of these societal issues that are taking place, then we've got a great chance of reducing the numbers of suicide. But it's going to take society and communities and workplaces and education centres to all get involved, and for all those working in the areas of mental health and suicide prevention to collaborate. So we're calling these events Empowering Mental Health Through Collaboration, and that's going to be a real theme of the two talks.
Yeah, and I think that's an absolute crucial word, collaboration. Too often we work in single silos, and too often we don't just get our heads up above the parapet and look at the wider context and the power of that collaboration. I know as a social entrepreneur, Golfing Society is a wonderful social enterprise and a social mission, but I can't do it alone. But for anyone in life who is sparked by sport, who wants an opportunity to keep enjoying life through sport or find a new life through sport, Golf in Society is perfectly placed to make a difference in that life. But it takes art, it takes culture, it takes music, it takes craft opportunities. It takes that whole package of opportunities to be available. So I know I can do my own little bit, but in collaboration with other people making a difference. And most, as importantly, the health and social care stakeholders, because ultimately they're often the first touch point for someone who is not feeling great about life. It's important that they understand that all those opportunities are out there and they can quickly and easily signpost people into services that will make a difference within that community.
And we use the term social prescribing a lot. We're familiar with that. And you know, what we're talking about here, what Matthew's proposing, you know, we want GPs to social prescribe this. You know, that's what we want. We don't want, as Matthew said earlier, sorry, I'm using your Sunday name now, Matthew, because been doing that. But, you know, we don't want the first port of call to be, well, let me give you a prescription for antidepressants, because that may not be the right solution, and neither should it always be the first solution. You know, so I think, you know, I think this is a go-to solution that happens all too frequently and too quickly, in my view, not always with the best of outcomes. So yeah, to have an initiative like this socially prescribed by GPs, it's just a very natural, sensible thing to do, really.
Yeah, I think it's fantastic, and I'm sure it'll be a great event. Matthew, we're going to be at that event together. We're going to be talking a bit about this new initiative that we talked about a little bit earlier in the podcast. But from your perspective, feeling a little bit more hopeful about the future, because you're a key individual within your remit to make sure that people get into the right programs and get their lives back on track as soon as possible. And you're an inspirational guy. You're a great human being. And I think you've got a real good future ahead of you, not as an individual, but as an organisation as well. And I think that having people like you as the first touch point to a life being turned around, I think is really, really important. And do you feel more hopeful that you're going to get people referred into programs that will make a difference across the county now, rather than just in the Harrogate area?
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for your kind words.
From the heart. Don't say it unless it's meant.
It's not all down to me, though. I have a fantastic team, a wonderful team within the Active Health team that do amazing things. They're very inspirational people, and they are changing people's lives. We're doing it in the Harrogate district. We have a lot of programs and initiatives that people can be referred into, and we are changing their life. And it's fantastic. We get case studies put together. We have testimonials. We have people that we've interviewed, and they will say that the programs that they've been on, the instructors that have helped them, the Wellbeing hubs where they come in, they can speak to our team, they can speak to people that come and visit the hubs. They can't thank us enough. And for us as a team, a lot of us say, well, you know, it's our job. You know, we enjoy doing that.
Yeah.
We don't necessarily sort of take on board the thanks and the recognition.
Yeah.
Because we think, oh, we're just doing our job, you know,
Yeah.
It's wonderful. It really is. And I know there's going to be a lot of hard work in making sure these programs and initiatives go out across the districts in North Yorkshire. At the moment, I would say we're the flag bearers, so to speak, with the most initiatives. And what the plan is strategically is to use our model across North Yorkshire.
That's fantastic news. And the reason I say that's fantastic news is that at the end of the day, our health and social care stakeholders, they need more things to signpost people into within their community. And you are brilliant at navigating what those support services look like within the community. That's how you discovered Golf in Society.
Yeah.
You know, in terms of people who've been through your Parkinson's program.
Yes.
Having something to do after that 12-week program.
Yes.
So you've been referring them on to the Golf in Society weekly sessions.
Yeah.
So I think it's a great way of showing how from diagnosis of Parkinson's into a health and wellbeing program, then onto an ongoing program in the community. That's how at grassroots we're shaping a better future for people.
Absolutely.
And giving them that, I call it pathway to happiness, but it is, it's giving them hope. It's giving them purpose. It's giving them new friends and new spaces and places to enjoy their life. And, you know, I think it's a great example, and we're being hopeful here. And I think we've got every right to be hopeful.
Yeah.
Because from the grassroots, from the coalface, we're shaping a better future.
Yes.
But it takes collaboration, and we can't do it alone.
That's one thing. It's so key, collaboration. And just through my time working with Harrogate Borough Council, initially Brimham's Active and now Active North Yorkshire, sometimes egos can get in the way.
Mm.
And I can quickly work out whether or not I'm going to collaborate with somebody or not.
Mm.
And it's a sad reality, because ideally, you know, if, like you were saying, we all come together, great people, when they come together, great things can happen. And that is what we need. And we need more of that in the world, not just North Yorkshire. We need that in the world. Yeah, we need more of it.
Well, let's take the biggest county and let's go from there, right?
Let's do it, yes.
I hope the audience has been enjoying this conversation as much as I have today. It's been brilliant to have Steve and Matthew with me and talking everything mental health. And I think that last session, all about hopes for the future and the inspiring ideas we're developing, was, it's warmed my heart, definitely. But we're going to finish today's conversation just with a little bit more hope for the future, and maybe a couple of wishes as to, if we had a wish, what that brighter future would look like. So, Steve, I'm going to put the pressure on you and ask you to go first on this little bit. So, one hope for the future.
Yeah, thank you, Anthony. You know, for us, it has to be that we're living in a society where suicide's a rare event rather than at the frequency we're seeing them now. And part of our way of moving towards that is an initiative we're launching. We've already started the conversations, meetings with many other people working in suicide prevention around an initiative called One Voice, One Hope. And that is looking to create a national network community of all those working in suicide prevention, particularly at grassroots, many of whom don't often get a seat at the big table, don't get their voices heard. Can we come together and provide a network community to support those people? And within that community, can we start to create collaborative groups working on very specific areas of suicide prevention, whether that be education or in workplaces, rather than the silo that Matt referred to, or maybe yourself referred to earlier on. So the big vision, which I'm setting out for the next 5 years, is One Voice, One Hope. And can we create this community? Because I really believe if we can, then we've got a chance of getting the numbers down.
That's fantastic. So sign me up now. Sign me up now.
Sounds good.
And it's free. There we are.
So, Matthew, we talked a little bit about your hopes and aspirations for the future. I think just maybe a little bit in terms of maybe a wish in terms of this space around mental health and men's mental health in particular.
I think my one wish for men's mental health in particular is offering a safe space for men to come together, walking side by side, enjoying green spaces, talking about any problems that they do have, and ultimately save lives. There's too many young men, in fact, even men that are getting older as well. I think I was in a meeting this morning with Steve, and the percentage of men between the age of 50 and 59 taking their own life, sadly, is increased. So my wish is to reduce that, reduce the suicides, prevent them from happening. If we can do that, start small initially, within the Harrogate district, then North Yorkshire, then the world, Anthony.
From small acorns.
Oh, absolutely. We've got to plant that and let it grow.
This time next year.
Yeah. We'll be millionaires.
Oh, that's fantastic. And I'm going to now share with the audience a little wish that I have for the future. You know, at Golfing Society, we've spent 8 years now and delivered over 6,000 sessions where we've improved people's physical, mental and social well-being. And we've given people hope for the future. We've given them a space and a place to enjoy coming to during their week. When you get diagnosis, often which can be a terminal diagnosis, the world becomes a very small place. Your social networks obviously shrink a little bit. You're told that you can't do a lot of things that you've enjoyed in life. And Golfing Society has proved that through this wonderful game we call golf, you can still have a little bit of hope for the future. You can enjoy your favourite thing if sport has been the thing that's made you tick throughout your life. But the one thing I want to really say is that we've really proved the way that it can improve your mental health, and whether that's just been diagnosed. And I think we sometimes underestimate the power of a conversation during one of our golf sessions with someone who has just been diagnosed with a Parkinson's diagnosis or a dementia diagnosis. And dementia in particular, because at the end of the day, we shouldn't forget that the people that get that diagnosis, they're still human beings and they've still got thoughts and feelings. And it's important that we help them through those difficult moments dealing with that life-changing condition that they've just been diagnosed with. But my wish is also to get this support out there to not only men facing challenges with their mental health, but also women and unpaid carers in particular. Because when I look at the evidence of the impact we have on the emotional well-being, the resilience and the hope for the future that we give carers, I think that is priceless. And I think of a future where these programs, the Golfing Society programs, are adopted at scale across the country, across the world, and imagine the impact that's going to have on the overall health, well-being and hope for the future of families facing challenges in life. And I know I always dream big, but, you know, Walt Disney once said, if you can dream it, you can do it. Well, I think today is all about giving hope for the future in what is an area that is a real problem for not just the UK, but the world as a whole, how we improve people's mental well-being and give them hope for the future. And today, it's been great to have Steve and Matthew just looking at what that hopeful, brighter future looks like. So thanks for your time today.
Welcome, pleasure.
No, thank you. Great.
And let's hope our dreams become a reality.